3.
You don't usually count up to go in, but sure.
Okay, well, let's do that then. 1, 2, 3. Well, good morning, everybody, or evening. I always say good morning because it's always morning here. We are here calling from the wilderness. I'm joined by the lovely, as always, Tim Miller from England. He is an Anglican priest over there in 2 parishes.
That's the one.
That's the one. And I am here on, it's been sunny here, sunny Vancouver Island in Duncan at St. Andrew's Presbyterian. Nice. Yeah, it's pretty nice. Our winters here, like, they don't really get cold. I mean, they get a little cold, like the wet cold. It's a wet cold, or it's a dry cold. It's a wet cold. But it's like always cloudy in the winter. Like, you never see the sun. And so I think I'd rather have sun and some snow than just the cloud all the time. Yeah. Seasonal depression or whatever is quite a big thing here.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
What's this?
Pretty sure that's like I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that's like what most British people just live with, and they don't realize that it's like seasonal affected. They just think that, British people might just be grumpy.
Grumpy all the time. Yeah. Well, here it's in the winter, you don't remember what the sun looks like, and in the summer, you don't remember what cloud looks like. And
oh, gosh.
That's how we go. So,
jeez. Just like childbirth, apparently you don't remember it after it's happened, but my God, getting through it.
Yes. I mean, speaking from experience, I can attest that, yes, you forget about it right away. Sometimes you poop a little, which apparently is the thing. I read this one story. This guy, he was saying how did you know that you were officially arrived as a dad? He was like, it was in the delivery room. We just delivered the baby. And the nurse went and got one of the warm blankets for my wife. And I said, oh, do you keep this at womb temperature? And I was like, that dad joke was the greatest joke I've ever had in my life. And that's when I knew that I had officially become a dad.
It's like a rite of passage.
Yeah. Except I've got the dad jokes and I'm not a dad, so
that you know of.
That I know of. Who knows? Some of those revival meetings. Mary can do it. I don't know where that was going, but we're gonna stop it. Welcome all to that very interesting and eclectic introduction. We're going to get into it. We're going to get back into reading of the scripture. I brought this passage in Revelation 22 to Tim because I had an idea about it. We didn't do this last week. Tim had a boiler problem, so we weren't able to do it last week. And since then, I've forgotten what my talk was going to be about with the scripture. So hopefully reading through it will re-jog my memory, or we'll go on a different path and we'll see what happens.
Or you might re-jog your memory and go on a different path, which would be very much what we're the paths that we tend to trod.
That is quite the possibility. Tim, would you like to read it for us?
Excellent. Yeah. So our passage today comes from Revelation chapter 22, verses 1 to 5, and I'm reading from the English Standard Version, the ESV. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb through the middle of the street of the city. Also on either side of the river, the tree of life, with its 12 kinds of fruit, yielding its fruit each month. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be anything accursed, but the throne of God and of the Lamb will be in it, and his servants will worship him. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads, and night will be no more. They will need no light of lamp or sun, for the Lord God will be their light, and they will reign forever and ever.
Yes. Well, I think we can leave it at that.
Is there anything in the reading that jumped out to you this time?
You know, what jumped out to me is the passage before this, when it's talking about the new heaven and new earth coming down. Just kind of what goes along with that in terms of our desire to get to heaven, that being the end goal of Christianity. And then with this, like, should we not be working towards this on earth right now? Like, if this is what is going to happen in heaven, we're bringing the kingdom of God with us now. Is this not what we're supposed to be kind of working towards?
Yeah.
And there's some other things, but I'll let you go.
Yeah, I think what I love, especially as we've touched on Genesis, first chapters of Genesis earlier on as well, but like, the reinstitution of the tree of life, I think is a fascinating thing to think about. And I think, as you say, what's really important is that place of eschatology. So our understanding of the end things, the end times, or what is to come, is actually something, as you say, that's actually meant to be our encouragement for something that we live into, not something that we simply wait for. And I think it's an important thing that we think about what that is in that context. So yeah, I'll stop sharing this, and then you can, if you've got something else you want to.
Well, it was the river there, talking about to the healings of the nations. I was just looking back into Genesis, and like Genesis 1, 2, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And then it talks about Eden being split up by the rivers, found in the different rivers.
Yeah.
The Bible Project has a great video actually on this, waters, and waters being kind of a representation of what is happening in Eden gets flowed out, like the river of life gets flowed out to all the nations with the Euphrates and the Tigris and all that. And then the Bible ends in the river of life again in Revelation. And our job is to be that river now. Like we're supposed to be bringing life to wherever we go. It's not just a thing that happened in the garden and is done, and then it'll happen in the new Jerusalem and new earth.
Yeah.
And we're just in this time of drought right now, but we are to bring it.
Yeah, bring it.
Like Jesus in the temple, on that what was the festival where they would take the water and pour it on the rocks after 7 days of partying. They would pour the water on the rocks, and Jesus in the back stands up and he's like, I am the water of life. Drink from me and you'll never be thirsty again.
Yeah.
And the woman at the well, I provide water that you will never thirst again. There's stories of that throughout the Bible. Jacob and the well and stuff like that. Where it's all tied around this idea of water and quenching the thirst of people that have come into drought, that aren't experiencing that refreshing, cool water, that are dry and dusty, like the bones.
The dry bones. Yeah. I think what really resonates with me in like what you said and what we've just read is just the way that I feel that kind of so much of Western evangelical spirituality and Protestant spirituality has emphasized so much this kind of end goal of once we get to heaven, then all things become perfect. Once we get to heaven, God sorts these things out. Once we get to heaven, death is defeated and pain shall be no more. Once we get to heaven, then God's kingdom wins and the devil is overthrown. Once we, like all these once we get to heaven things. But actually, the imperative for the faithful has always been to make disciples who follow in the way of Jesus, who said that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of heaven is here among you. The kingdom of heaven is near to you. And in that sees, signs of healing, of demons cast out, of food shared to those who had none, of communities taking ownership and taking care of people who were not their own kin. And yet we seem to, we've so heavily emphasized the kingdom that's coming and not living in the light of that kingdom, that and I feel
is
like,
at hand.
Yeah. And I feel like, like for me, so much of what I've grown up with, and even so much what I feel like sometimes I do even on a Sunday as a priest, and in kind of what people ask of me as a licensed minister of a church is about emphasizing an affirmation of those who have committed to the club, as it were, right? So it's like, whatever you're going through in life right now, don't worry. Remember, you're in, so things get better in the end. Don't worry, whatever's going on in your life or whatever someone else might tell you is true. We know that God has conquered death. There is a resurrection still to come, and we will all end up in heaven, even if nobody else does. Mm-hmm. And what I feel like we just keep missing is what's the disruption, what's the inbreaking, what's the event of God happening in this moment that calls into being, as you were so awkwardly talking about birth at the beginning, is it like, what is that that's being born in our midst? Like when a child is born, you don't spend the next 18 years saying, well, once you're an adult, you'll realize, so let's just get through this. And then when you turn 18, you'll realize I was right the whole time. And now your life's ahead of you as an adult and you can take care of yourself. And we can, but we actually say, like, you are a human being who is a part of this world, has value and importance because you exist, and what you bring into the world matters now as much as it will later on in life. And we need to live into that reality, that what you do is valuable, is important, is life-giving, not just for you who now lives and breathes and has your being, but for those that you now share that with. And it's that way that we refuse. And I say we, in using that, understanding that in myself, like often refuse to actually be a part of that disruption in the moment, because we keep just like saying, well, God's going to sort it out. God's going to sort it out. It's too hard to actually sort out, the problem of an issue of homelessness right now. But in the new heaven and new earth, there will be no homelessness, so God can sort it out. I'll do my best I can right now, but I don't need to put too much pressure on myself, because God's going to sort it when I get there. So.
Yeah. That theology of heaven being the end goal, that's all that matters. I know when I was a mid-teen, like 14, 15, I think somewhere around there, I was battling suicide and suicidal thoughts quite heavily. And theologically, my mind was, well, if heaven's the end goal, why not just jump to the end? Like, why do I have to do life here? If that's the perfect spot and that's where everything's awesome, why not just jump to the end? Like, I don't have to run the race. I can just win the ribbon. And the second thing was, well, if God's will is always going to happen, or God's plan is never going to change and it always happens, it doesn't really matter if I'm involved or not, because it'll happen. Someone else will pick up the slack, or someone else will do what I was supposed to do. So really, my life is somewhat insignificant. What I do on this earth, I can just jump to the end, and I don't really need to be here for this missing out. But I'm missing out on this for something better in heaven. Like I can spend this time in heaven, right? And so I think the theology of getting to the end is a dangerous one if taken to the nth degree and not focusing on life now. Like Jesus, we focus on the death and resurrection because that gets us into heaven. But what about his life? What did he do in his life? And how are we learning from his example and doing that? Because if really Jesus' death and resurrection made us into heaven, he didn't really have to go 33 years, 5 years, 10 years. Then something happens.
A few minutes.
And then, and it's done, right? Perfect life done. But he was around for 33 years. Like obviously his life, his teachings was supposed to help us in our life and our teachings, or in our way we interact with one another in bringing what we read about in Revelation to now, the healing of the nations. And believe it or not, our nation could use a little healing right now. And all nations, and being those peacemakers and being that, just what does Jesus want in this? What is bringing the kingdom of God look like in this moment, in this situation? Not waiting for the end of everything, but right now, how am I living that out?
Yeah. Can I ask you? You don't have to answer. But can I ask what changed that moved you from that place of feeling the weight of theological nihilism?
A couple things. The first one was the one night I was going to do it. We used to do these March for Jesus things back in Thunder Bay where like all the churches would get together. You get trucks with sound speakers and tambouriners and flags and walk around the streets and claim
shofars.
Shofar, yeah, oh yeah. Whole king caboodle. And I remember being at one of those rallies. They used to do rallies before that to kind of pump people up and learn the songs. I remember sitting there being like, this is the night. This is when I'm going to do it. So I'm in the back and I'm bawling. People probably think I'm being touched by Jesus. I wasn't. And then I went home and trigger warning. If you're battling this, reach out first off. But I remember sitting down and I had a knife. I was like, okay, God, like I'm bawling. And I'm like, okay, you either have to take this away from me so I don't feel this way, or let me do it because I can't live in the in-between anymore. And I battled with that for a while and then decided not to do it. I was pretty thirsty. So I went up and got some water. And as I was walking upstairs, I heard my mom praying in tongues and then just praying. And I was like, what are you praying for? And she's like, I don't know. I just really felt like I needed to pray right now. And I was like, oh, you know what? It kind of hit me. I think I know why you're praying. And I told her. And then at that moment, I knew that my life mattered. That my mom would pray for me without even knowing what she was praying for. And then, and I wouldn't say I got rid of that. Like it would creep up every once in a while, even at Bible school. But in each time, something would distract me from it. I remember one time I got pretty depressed in Bible school for a night, and during the wrestling with it, I was trying to figure out how I would work that into a sermon. And then I was like, oh, snake in the grass, you got me. And now I'm not thinking about it. I'm figuring out how I would use this to teach other people. And then I discovered that if I get that depressed, if I go to bed, I will feel better in the morning. So I just have to go to sleep. And then in the morning, I'll feel better. And one of my pastor, my mom told, or I told him about it, and my mom told him about it, and he came up to me and he was just like, I when you're thinking those thoughts, I just want you to say, that's stupid. And I don't recommend that for everyone, because I don't think everyone would respond the same way. But when I get those thoughts, that's just what I think, and it works for me. But I would reach out. Reaching out was a big thing. Telling my mom, and that, and then I was told that with suicide, you wouldn't get to heaven because you're taking your own life, and that means you're putting yourself in place of God. I was like, oh, that seems weird. I don't know how that works. So I wrestled with that for a while. But yeah, I like working through it. There's not really a clear way, I don't think, that would obviously work for everyone. But reaching out, I would say, was a big thing. Like there's hotlines, there's telephone numbers. Reach out to friends and family, someone you trust. And if you're being reached out to, the last thing you want to do is judge. Just listen and be there, and don't be like, oh, you've got all these good things going for you, and all. Like, I have good things going for me. I had a good life. It's not about that. It's what's going on in your brain, right? So just listen, and listening, just praying with them, or just, like, if you're wrestling with this, I'll be a sounding board for you. You just tell me what's going on, and I will be there for you. It's huge.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. I don't want to kind of, like the old, don't want to leave this space. Want to, sit in it, and allow it. But I think like, if there's one of those testimonies of what you've said and what we've read in Revelation, it's about being present to people, which is where healing happens. And the healing doesn't happen in a forced way. It doesn't happen in the same way for every person, but it comes because people are allowed to be honest and open with who they are in that moment, and the story and experiences that they bring into that space. And it's our privilege, it's our pain, it's our position as humans to be able to sit with each other in that, and to be dismissive, which, for anyone who has been, hurt by the institutional church or by a specific church, I'm very sorry, and, ask your forgiveness for the way that the place that was meant to be a place of safety and security and healing for you became a place of abuse, a place of pain, and a place of problem. That's not what God's intention is for human flourishing and life together. And the way that the church has sometimes not realized that we've put ourselves not in the place with being alongside of victims, but actually the place of the villain. And, I just pray that for anyone who has been hurt by the church, that you wouldn't stop seeking for somebody else to sit with. And that, my prayer is that if there's anybody, that maybe like Derek's mom is just feeling like you're supposed to be thinking about somebody, praying for somebody, reach out to be with them. Don't just let the moment go by. You never know kind of just what a single message saying, hey, I'm thinking about you today, could mean and could open up in a way that isn't otherwise possible. But, the presence of God to the people of God gathered around the tree of life for healing is a beautiful image that I hope can bring some peace and grace to wherever you find yourself today. So I've got,
I don't know what else to say either.
I know.
All right.
Go well.
Yeah. Live well. Reach out.
Yeah.
Be the kingdom to people around you. We're here. Yeah. We're open. Yes.
Yeah.
You get peace.
Take care.
Take care.